Hello again. I'm back. Second half of chapter 4, The Look of Manos. I think before we start, I just want to say a couple things real quick. I just found this. It's a script, dog-eared, a very dog-eared script of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You know, the one that the film was made at Salem State Hospital in Oregon. But anyhow, this is a very dog-eared script. You can see it's got all kinds of notes and everything. My dad, as you discovered hearing the book so far, he was a lead actor in the El Paso Festival Theater, community theater, and that's where he met Hal Warren and Bill Jennings and John Reynolds. And anyhow, Dad actually played the lead character, R.P. McMurphy, in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. In, I believe it was 1969 that he did that. Anyhow, more Manos trivia. Oh yeah, one more thing. And this is one of my dad's hand sculptures that I talked about just in that last segment. Clay and then bronzed, or I don't know what you call it when it's silver, but yeah. Rambling. All right. Ooh, don't drop that. Well, let's finish chapter 4. This has been tough. It took me several days to figure out my editing and to get this thing transferred, but I did it because I'm determined. So here we go. Part 2, chapter 4. For the wives' costumes, Mom purchased yards and yards of chiffon and inexpensive and sheer fabric. Each of the 6 wives' dresses required close to 5 yards each. The transparent gowns were intended to be worn over sexy underwear, but the women balked and began wondering if somehow they had been misinformed and were now involved in a quasi-porn film. The costumes had been designed to address Dad's budget, Mom's time for sewing, and Hal's fervent desire for voyeuristic sexuality, but with little thought to possible revolt by the women. Lead wife Stephanie Nielsen was especially vocal and threatened to walk, according to Dad. In deference to the girls' skittishness, in haste, and again, with budget in mind, Mom headed back to the fabric store. She bought a couple yards of red fabric, cut it into long lengths, and used a 3/4 inch wide width piece of elastic for a belt, and fastened it with a large safety pin. The red fabric went between the legs and up over the belt in the front and back, like a breechcloth. It was the best Mom could do with the resources at hand, so the women reluctantly agreed to wear the costumes, but not without some adjustments of their own. They showed up for the filming in the most modest underwear they could find. Full coverage, wide strap bras, and waist-to-thigh panties. Hal, Bernie, and Bob were sorely disappointed. Bernie recalled that the girls were all really uncomfortable with the costumes and showed up in those awful granny panties and bras that looked like leftovers from World War II. They wouldn't change even after the red modesty strips were added. And that unilateral decision took some of the fun out of the whole thing for the crew. It also diluted the theme for Hal and his visions of skirting the ratings by a margin, but there was no more to be done. Maybe some of the sexiness lacking in the costumes would be recovered in the cat fight scene. One could only hope. Mom made nearly all of my clothes herself, and Debbie's costume was no exception. Although I initially felt a little let down not having something special, I was really excited when I learned that I would also have one of the pretty white wives' dresses for the film's final scene so I could be like the big girls. The other actors, Bernie and Joyce, Diane and Hal, and the women travelers, chose their own clothing and made do from their own closets. In addition to the props and costumes, Dad was also in charge of the set and the makeup. And since he wasn't given a dime for supplies, he brought his own box of stage makeup and used whatever was in the kit. Unfortunately, since he was also starring in the film, there was no makeup artist on set to keep the actors looking fresh in the heat of the El Paso desert. Even at night, the makeup dissolved and sweated off over the course of the shoot. The property where all the Manos filming happened was located just off Gateway East in the Lower Valley in Socorro. It belonged to the newly elected Judge Colbert Coldwell, who had become a fourth-generation El Paso lawyer after passing the bar exam in 1961. In 1965, he was appointed U.S. Commissioner and then won election as county judge in early 1966. According to his 2010 El Paso Times obituary, among other notable cases, he presided over the preliminary and detention hearings for singer Johnny Cash, charged with smuggling prescription drugs across the border in a guitar case. The judge was involved in a number of civic and community organizations during his lifetime, well known and respected for his public service. We don't know for sure how Hal had learned of the property. It may have been when he had an office in the same building as Judge Coldwell's law office. It may have been through Bill Jennings, an El Paso lawyer at the time, or any of the many other resources Hal seemed to have at his fingertips. However it came to be, the little ranch hand house in the master and wives outdoor domain in the back part of the Coldwell Ranch couldn't have served Hal and his script better. When Dad and Hal first drove out and saw the property, they knew they had found the perfect place. In 1966, it was away from city lights, but not so far to travel for the cast and crew, only about 20 minutes from our house. It also helped that Judge Coldwell would allow them to shoot there at no cost as long as they left the property the same way they found it. The columns and the stone slab that served as the wives' and masters' resting place had originated as part of the El Paso Federal Courthouse, designed by Henry C. Trost Architects in 1915 and 16. The building underwent a major remodel in 1955 and 6, and ultimately was razed in 1988 when a new courthouse was built. After the remodeling, the judge's dad purportedly saved and transported a portion of the Trost building, including some of the columns and a large stone slab, to the family ranch property, perhaps as nostalgia and honor for the generations of El Paso lawyers that came before him. That decision would ultimately become a point of nostalgia for legions of fans when the setting went down in history as the master's lair. When I saw the restoration of Manos Hands of Fate for the first time in August 2010 at the El Paso Classic Film Festival, I was struck by how clear everything is and how many new memories surfaced from seeing it in that way. Watching Manos is like some bizarre home movie where so many things from my personal life are preserved in this strange film. It leads me to remember something my youngest son asked me when he was only 3. "Are we in somebody else's cartoon, Mom?" Sometimes it feels that way. I noticed items from our home that we brought for the set. Pretty much all of the furniture from the location house came from our own home. The only furnished items in the Manos house were an old 50s refrigerator in the kitchen where we kept our food and snacks, the bed in the bedroom, covered with a quilt my great-grandmother had made, and the couch in the living room. Every time I watch Manos and see that disgusting couch, I have to wonder at Hal's direction for a child to lie down and rest her sweet little face against its filthy cushions, stained with God knows what. The greater wonder is that Dad didn't object to or question that decision. I wonder why I don't have cleanliness issues or nervous facial tics as a result. Who knows? Maybe in the long run it actually contributed to my strong immune system. The books on the shelves came from our home library. Dad chose the oldest looking ones we had and turned many of the spines to the wall to hide the titles. In retrospect, that small detail probably contributes subconsciously to the weirdness, leaving one to wonder, what kind of statement is that? Because who would have books and hide the titles? The trunk in Torgo's room had been passed down from my great-grandfather and was probably already over 80 years old in 1966. The pile of dirt that served as Torgo's bed was moved into the house from the yard for that specific purpose. It's just another small aspect of the film that one may find disturbing, even just on a subconscious level, chosen not for the psychological impact, but for budget, time, and available resources. Once filming was done and everything was removed from the house, the dirt pile remained, much to the consternation of Judge Coldwell. He later commented on this, wondering why on earth the dirt had been moved into the house in the first place, according to Dad. Other props in Torgo's room included the wife's dress hanging from a nail on the wall, a length of rope, and a beer bottle on the trunk, all randomly placed items, hastily added from whatever happened to be at hand. The beer bottle most assuredly was the idea of Bernie and Bob as a prank, impossible to test Hal's powers of observation. Even the master's evil hell beast was on loan from the Naaman household. Shanka was a big, beautiful 6-year-old Doberman Pinscher who we had had as long as I could remember. Our other dog, Ricky, an ill-tempered dachshund who harassed and bossed Shanka to no end, was much too ornery to have a part in Manos. Ricky would steal Shanka's food, nipping and snarling, while Shanka stood patiently by, hoping that something would be left. I only remember one time when Shanka lost his temper with Ricky. I was in the house when I heard terrible screeching yelps from the yard, and I looked outside to see Shanka swinging Ricky off the ground by his long flappy ears. Shanka immediately let go with a look of profound regret and embarrassment, and Ricky went sailing to land hard in the dirt. After that, at least for a while, Ricky pulled the reins in a bit on his bad attitude and warily viewed Shanka with a touch more respect. I truly loved that Doberman, and I love watching him now in Manos. He was not so smart and not so trained and somewhat insecure, but so gentle and sweet. The best friend a little girl could have. Although lacking the evil presence to portray the master's demon dog, he did have the perfect look and was the only actor who answered the casting call for the role. Peppy the poodle was the Warrens' dog and was about as trained as Shanka to obey commands, which was obviously very little. Hal's youngest son, Joe, who was born only a month before Manos' premiere, relayed a story from when he was a baby in which Peppy bit him on the lip, a scar that Joe carries to this day. The sheriff's 1966 Chevrolet Biscayne was an actual sheriff's car, borrowed along with the uniform, shirts, and badges from El Paso County Sheriff Mike Sullivan, who thought the film would portray the sheriff's department in a good light. He was known to seek out positive public acknowledgement and was sure the benefit of being associated with El Paso's future film industry would serve as free and ongoing publicity. Somehow, a flashlight prop for the sheriff to use when getting out of the official car was overlooked, and a hasty substitute was scrounged from someone's glove compartment or trunk, an usher's flashlight from the festival theater. It didn't read as well on film as hoped, but it was the only one available at the time. The kissing couple's beautiful 1963 Triumph Spitfire 4 belonged to Bernie Rosenblum, the one doing half of the kissing. He was quite proud to have an opportunity to show off his baby on film, and I'm not talking about his female scene partner. The family car with the taillight out was Hal Warren's blue 1966 Ford Galaxie 500. The taillight bulb was removed to accommodate the script, and when the cops pull over the family to inform them, you got a taillight out. The white 1964 Oldsmobile Dynamic 88 at the end of the film, which transported the vacationing women to their unknown fate at the Valley Lodge, was our own name and family car, with the crumpled driver's side back quarter panel due to Dad's having backed into something. The MST3K guys who ripped this movie were closer to the mark than they ever imagined when they quipped. Every frame of this movie looks like someone's last known photograph. The whole thing looks like a photo album to me. That's it. Chapter 4. I did it. The only thing left is to get it online, which I will go do right now. But first I have to talk about this once again. Mystery Science Theater trading cards, the official cards. The 4th series, this is the 3rd. The 4th series is all monos. And it's going to have a lot of extra things. I'm not even sure of all the extra things, but it's going to have more than any of the 3 previous ones. As far as I understand, there's going to be games and trivia provided by me. As you can tell from my book, I did a lot of research and I had a lot of memories. So check that out. I'll be posting links, and we're doing a Kickstarter right now. We're halfway through it. It's doing quite well.